Join us today at our community Zicharon Basalon ahead of Yom HaShoah, which commences this Wednesday evening. Our sincere thanks go to our hosts Ruth and Iva, David, who once again, as they have for the last 9 years, graciously opened their home to hold this Zicharon, this remembrance in their lovely salon. And I think for Ruth especially, as I mention each time, her maternal grandparents perished, the connection is very close. We gather tonight to unite in mind and heart, to take in and tune in to the recollections and reflections seared in body and soul of a child survivor, our esteemed guest, Devorah Kieffer, and to honour the memory of the 6 million of our notional brothers and sisters, including 1.5 million children who were murdered by the Nazis and their collaborators in the darkest days of the last 100 years and beyond. At our past Zicharon Basalon evenings, we've listened to survivors who have continually spoken about their Shoah experiences for the 8 decades since the war, and survivors who could not or would not for some or for very many years before they were ready to open up and share their stories. The passage of time may be important to give a lesser sense of confrontation in recall and an expanded perspective through the longitudinal lens of time. There is danger, though, that the passing of years shifts events from the vivid here and now to a historical past and may dull the dire severity of impact and even fuel revisionist disinformation, as has happened. The actuality and murderous barbarity of the Shoah retains its urgency in that such depraved inhumanity as our people suffered then cannot and must not be allowed to recur. Never again, the catch cry we all vehemently and proudly proclaimed since the end of World War II, took a shocking battering on 7 October. But with renewed resolve and focused action, never again must continue to be weighted with full import and meaning. Face-to-face, first-hand accounts of Shoah survivors, dwindling as they are, remain the prime mode of bringing to us, to the world, the day-to-day, minute-by-minute struggles of those caught up in the Nazi hell, of delineating the conflict between good versus evil, which has tragically once more taken centre stage in the last 18 months, and inspiring us through their personal courage, grit and faith to make sure never again, never more becomes ever again. We're honoured tonight to have with us Devorah Kieffer and to hear her story of survival with numerous miracles along the way, which in turn brought many blessings to Devorah. Devorah was born in Vienna in 1932. Quick calculation, 92. Baruch Hashem, 92 years young. When she was 6 and one of 4 siblings, her family smuggled themselves to Belgium. From there they escaped to France, where without identity papers they were incarcerated, but eventually were able to sail via Iran, Algiers, Casablanca to the Virgin Islands, then to Puerto Rico, and finally in 1941 to America. In 1970, Devorah and her family made Aliyah. A teacher by profession, she taught at the Mikhalah at Hebrew University and at the David Yellen College of Education. The most wonderful thing I learnt about Devorah when I first met her recently is that she is, now count as I say it, a great, great, great grandmother. 5 generations.
My oldest daughter gave birth to a first child who made me into a grandmother.
Right.
She is now a grandmother herself, so that makes me what you said.
What I said. 5 generations, Baruch Hashem. I thank Les Glassman, who's with us tonight to video record Devorah's address, for connecting me with Devorah. And Les is a dentist by profession, but his passion is to video record testimonies, so kol hakavod. There'll be opportunity to ask Devorah questions after her address. And as our tradition is, we will end with a couple of closing remarks, the partisan song in Yiddish and Hatikva. Please welcome Devorah Kieffer.
I just said was the culmination, really, of what I'm feeling. After surviving all this time, to be able to say that my granddaughter is a grandmother herself, and that makes me a fifth generation, that blows my mind even to this minute. It's just so remarkable, and what a nest to be able to enjoy this kind of a family. I'll show you who we are in a little while. Okay. You were right. I was born on November 10th, 1932. On my 6th birthday in 1938, November 10th, it was the day of the Kristallnacht. And I didn't have a birthday party. I was hiding under the bed, and the noises and the crying and the screams and everything that was going on around me. We lived in Vienna, the second district, which was very, very Jewish. We had two districts that many Jews lived in, the 9th Bezirk and the 2nd Bezirk, and the second one. We lived in the second one. Hollandstraße 2 was my address. Well, after Kristallnacht, it was maybe 2 days after, a little bit, the Gestapo encouraged the police to come to the house, and at 2 o'clock in the morning we heard boots against the door, banging, waking us up. They told my father that he has to dress immediately. They're going to be taking him, and he has to go back to Spungen, which is a border town between Poland and Germany. Since he had he was born in Poland, they were rounding up all the Polish people. And of course this was totally surprising. We didn't know who, what, where, when, but when you're told to do this and they're standing there with big rifles, sometimes I revert back to the German when I talk about them. And my father gets dressed and they take him. Also, he looks at the bottom of the list and he sees that my brother Zalman was also born in Poland, and they said, we need to take him too. And then my mother did something that I didn't appreciate until just recently, how her intervention was so crucial. She had the courage to go over to the two people who were there and ask them not to take Zalman because he had just returned from the hospital after having an appendectomy. And he wouldn't be able to make a train trip. And they didn't shoot her, and they didn't laugh at her, and they let him stay in his bed recuperating from the surgery. And they just took my father. Then they came I don't know whether it was a month or sometime later, again at 2 o'clock in the morning, banging on the door, waking us all up. And the same two people, and they said, where's your husband? And she said, but you took him. You took him when you were here last. And they could see she was out of asleep and she didn't know what was going on. They believed her. And they walked away. The next morning she ran to her sister's house and she said, we had another visit. They knew what she was talking about, and they said, oh, thank goodness, now we can tell you he's hiding in our basement. My father somehow, I have to reframe this a little bit because I was 6 years old at the time. The things that I learned afterwards were supplied to me by my big brother and the people around me, because I had no idea that what I'm telling you was my own vision, because I was just too little to understand this. But I was told that my father was in the train going to Spungen. They stopped the train, people were going off. The Poles didn't want them to come in and the Germans didn't want them to come back, and it was a problem there. And my father thought, if I go into Poland, I'm as good as dead. if I go off the train and they find me, so they'll shoot me and I'm dead too. But if I go off the train and they don't find me, and I'm able somehow to slip by them, maybe I can get back and save the family. I left a wife with 4 children alone without any planning. Maybe I can be of some help to them. And he did. He came through Dresden and then walked through Germany, was given some handouts and different things in order for him to be able to make it back to Vienna, knew not to come home, not to tell my mother, and to hide where he was safe. That very night, he, my aunt, and her husband, and my brothers, and Zalman was already recuperated partially from his surgery, and my younger brother, they all left Vienna, and they tried to get into Belgium that was still neutral. And they went through Germany to Cologne. And they got I don't know how, I wasn't told how they managed to smuggle themselves into Belgium, but they did. Meanwhile, I'm home. I don't go to school because none of the Jewish children were permitted in schools anymore. And my mother is busy sewing sacks of all of our equipment, the clothing and the treasures, everything we had in big bags. We had no suitcases. And she sewed the bags closed, wanting to ship them to Belgium once she knew of an address, and if my father got in, he would send her where to ship our goods. Meanwhile, she was preparing. Okay. We had a maid in Vienna. My mother and father both worked and they had a textile store in Vienna. And we went for a vacation in a place called Wieslau. It was like a resort place. And here's a picture, the only picture that I have from my family, because my mother would take a loaf of bread when we were running rather than pictures. And this is the picture of the family on the vacation in Wieslau.
Which one is you?
My mother is on the left, and I'm sitting on a box that I got a cut from when they plumped me down, and I tried not to cry, but I wasn't smiling. Next to me is my baby sister on the lap of our maid. Her name was Paula Planins, and she was with us for many, many years. I was barely 3 at the time. My younger brother is sitting on my father's lap, and my older brother Zalman is on the back of behind me. Okay, so this is the only picture that survived, and I've enlarged it, and I have it in my house in a frame. After Kristallnacht, our maid, who was with us for many years, I mean, here I'm a little girl yet, and my sister is really a baby. And she left, when Kristallnacht, I was 6. So she's been with us at least 4 or 5 years. She became so angry and so harsh. She felt that she was now in charge of everything that was in the house. She helped herself to whatever she wanted, and we couldn't say a word. It was many of the Viennese people, even after Anschluss, they didn't even wait for Kristallnacht. As soon as Germany invaded Austria and made it part of Germany, the Viennese people had it in for all the Jews. And after Kristallnacht, it was even worse. So she was very, very volatile, and she let us know that she's in charge, and it was very, very uncomfortable. We finally locked the door, and we didn't see her again after that. When my mother got word that my father he was succeeded in getting into Belgium, she went to the post office and sent all the bags to the address that my father had gotten. And then it was our turn to go to Belgium. And our family unit was my mother, my sister and I, and my grandmother and grandfather. My grandfather still had, he had a beard and this big standing kippah there on his head. You could see that he shouted, "I'm a Jew," with the way his bearing was. And we had to leave as soon as we could. We go also through Köln to Cologne, trying to cross the border illegally. And we were in a hotel of sorts, and my mother was getting looked at because our combination screamed refugees, Jews. There was no young man in charge. There were just women and an old gentleman and two little children. It just screamed refugees. She was afraid that it would be too difficult for her to try and get through to Belgium. So she put my sister and myself on a train. And the train was going to go to Antwerp, Belgium. She felt that if the two little ones were in my father's care, the three of them that were left would have an easier time getting through to Belgium illegally. So I was the one to be in charge. I'm 6. And I'm going on a train with my sister, and I have to be careful to be the big sister. And I'm not to talk to anybody, and I'm not to eat the sandwiches that she prepared until later on, because it's a long, long trip. And my father's going to meet me at the station, and everything is going to be fine. So we go on the train. The train then didn't have seats like they have now. They were little rooms with 3 benches, 2 on the side and 1 near the window seat. So we were sitting in these little rooms. And the train was going to Belgium. It almost gets to Belgium. We had eaten our sandwiches already, and we're thinking soon we'll see our father, and that would be wonderful. And people come into the train looking for someone. They were searching the train. It stopped before it got into the station, and they were checking everyone. They did leave us alone. They asked us a few questions, but they didn't really examine us fully. So we were fairly safe. And then they went from room to room, and then instead of the train going into the station, it went back to Cologne. And no one was permitted to leave. We were all sitting there, and then we had to stay and go back to where we came from. We reached Cologne back it was almost midnight, and my sister is crying. She's tired. She's barely 4 years old, and it was very difficult. My mother thinks we're with my father. Everybody leaves the train and goes to their homes, and we're standing there at the station. We don't know what to do. And my sister starts to cry. She's tired. Ich bin hungrig. Will schlafen, you know. She wants to sleep and she's hungry. And I'm supposed to soothe her. And what's going on in my kishkes is something horrible. When I talk about it, sometimes I get a visceral reaction here. There's a 6-year-old child inside me right now. Sorry. We're standing at the station, and I don't know what to do. There's a woman across the street comes, and she said, "Come to my house. I'll take care of you." She talks to my sister. "I'll give you hot chocolate and put you to bed." My sister hands her hand, and she's ready to go, and I'm yanking her back, and I said, "No, we have to wait, we have to wait, we have to stay here. I don't know if I can trust this lady. Is she like Pola Planins? Is she going to turn us over to the Nazis? What is she going to do to us? I'm 6 years old, going on 40. And I don't know what to do. Should I let my sister go by herself? Should I go with her? Should we both stay here? Should we both go? It was horrendous. I really had such a difficult time to decide, what do I do here? And I finally, she pulled her again, and I wouldn't let her go, and I started to holler, how will my mother find us if we go with you? And then the woman said, I'll tell the ticket taker. I'll give him my name and my address. And when she was willing to do that, I thought maybe that might be okay for us to do and go with her. And she did. She told the ticket taker what her name and address was, and if a woman comes looking for two little girls, he should tell her where we are. And then the two of us went with her. She was good, like her word. She gave my sister hot chocolate and put her to bed. She wanted to give me something too, but I didn't want to take anything. I sat at the window, the same window that she saw us. I was at that window, put my elbow on the windowsill and my hand under my chin, and I was looking at the station like she was, waiting to see if my mother was coming. And I don't know how she did it, but close to morning, my mother came and she found us. Until she got word from my father, and what she was going through, I can't imagine when she heard that the train came back, and of course it was so late afterwards. In those days there were no phones to be had. You couldn't even send a telegram quickly. They had to put it on, I don't know what they used, Morse code or what, and then they had this ticket that they put on a paper, and they had somebody on a bicycle ride to the address and to hand over the telegram. So until she got word, it must have taken hours and hours and hours. What she went through, I hate to imagine. But she found me at the windowsill. She had to pull my hand away because I had fallen asleep looking over at the station. After she found us, we never went far away from her. We just hooked onto her, and we didn't leave her for a minute. And I was certainly very, very relieved that we weren't lost forever. It was a horrible feeling. Okay, we decide then we have to leave right away because staying in the hotel was too dangerous. So we walk towards the border, and of course a policeman stops us when we got there. He was so tall. He wore a black uniform. He had this tremendous rifle, and he told us, halt. We had to halt. We couldn't go through. We're with my grandfather and grandmother, my mother, and the two little ones. And my grandmother, we spoke Yiddish in the house. And we spoke the language of the outside world when we were outside. So in outside I spoke German, in the house it was always Yiddish. And in France it was French outside and Yiddish in the house. In Belgium it was Flemish, and then it was a story. So my grandmother always talked to us in Yiddish. She says, "Kim her, come to me." Grandmother calls, you go. I went to her and she says, "Geht sie zum Soldat." She wanted me to go to the, how many of you understand Yiddish? Okay, great. "Geht sie zum Soldat und sagen, als hat uns den Stoch lassen, Gott im Schelten. Und nicht dein Finger." I had to lift my finger, and I had to go to the soldier and say that if he doesn't let us through, God is going to curse him. I'm 6 years old. She was so clever, but I was more afraid of my grandmother than I was of the soldier. And when my grandmother said to go to the soldier, I went. But she was very clever. She knew that if any of the adults would speak to him, he would not pay any attention, and he would say, and he might even use his rifle and if they didn't move away from the border. But she didn't think that he would hurt a little girl. So I walked over to him, and I'm talking to him in German, and I end up saying, "Und Gott wird ihnen strafen." And I'm using my finger, and I'm telling him that Hashem was going to punish him if he doesn't let us through. And he looks at me, and I'm talking to him in third person because he's an adult, and I was trained that you don't talk Padu, you have to say Ia in third person. And I'm telling him God's going to punish him. And it's strange. And he looks at me and he said, "Don't curse me, little girl." And he said, "I want to talk to your mother." And then I was scared. I was more afraid then. I didn't know what he was going to do to her. But my mother went towards him and he whispered to her that he couldn't possibly let us through because he would be shot if he didn't listen to the rules. But he knows of a smuggler. And if the little ones are able to climb the hill and get to him, then maybe he could take us across to Belgium. We climbed the hill, no problem. And we used the smuggler that he suggested, and we got into Belgium. And we met my father. We were going to be in Belgium for a while. My father had a feeling that Belgium was not going to be neutral for very long. He was afraid. He wanted to leave Europe altogether and get to the United States. And he had a distant cousin who was in America. His name was Herman Jungleib, and he was very wealthy. And he came from a little country, a dorp, a village called Przemysl. And he didn't know how to reach him. He was never in contact with him before. So he wrote to the Przemysl Landsmannschaft, a group that gets together from the same area. You know, when people came to a new country, they wanted to be near other people from the same area. So there was he wrote to them if they knew a Herman Jungleib, and we wanted to have him issue us visas to the United States. Herman Jungleib was a very, very wealthy person. He didn't know us from Boo, really. He was a very distant cousin. We didn't have any contact with him. But he was willing to give us the visas. And he was willing to guarantee that we would not fall on the financial burden on the state of the United States. But the Polish quarter for Jews was already filled. And my father was born in Poland, so he couldn't get in. But he had a friend. And the friend was a representative of the Congress with many years seniority in the United States, in New York. And his name was Saul Bloom. Have any of you heard of him? He was a representative in New York, very, very, very popular. He was friendly with him, and he asked him if he could do something. And I'm told that he wrote a private member's bill so the 6 Schechters would be permitted to come into the United States. And that's how we got our visas. The visas were accomplished. We passed the medical exams, and all the things, the pictures were taken, everything was fine. We went to the consulate on May 9th, and my father had gone to Brussels once to bring Nansen passports that were international passports for people who don't have any. It's a whole story with that one. But we went to the consulate, everything was fine. Come back tomorrow, the visas will be stamped and the seals would be embossed and everything would be fine. Pick them up tomorrow morning. Wonderful. But tomorrow morning was May 10th, and Hitler bombed Belgium and France and Holland on that night, 9th and 10th. And we rushed to the consulate. The consulate is closed. Lines of people are standing. Nobody can go in. Somebody finally comes out of the consulate and says, "We have orders from the government that no visas will be given out until the situation clears." So since the war started, there the consulate was closed and nobody could go in or come out. So we had no passports, we had no papers, everything was inside. And the bombs are falling and the houses are going up in smoke. I remember being woken up and rushed downstairs to the basement to hide behind the sacks of sand for protection. And my father went back the next day and the day after, and the embassy was still closed. Nobody would open up the doors. And the situation was getting very, very dire in Antwerp. And my father thought any minute the Nazis were going to come in, and once they're in, that we're finished. So we had to leave, and we ran to this train station. We get on a train that's going upwards to France. They started to fight in Paris and the upper areas of France. But we're going south to France, and the train swerved away from Paris, going down further, and we had to transfer to coal cars. They were open on top for the coal to be thrown in. We were squashed in there, and it didn't matter, as long as the train was leaving and getting away. We get to a point where we see Stutka, a German dive bomber, coming down, fighting with a French or a Flemish, I don't remember which, another plane. And pieces of the plane are falling onto the cars. And one of them fell on the car behind us, and people were screaming. Some people died. We were lucky that it didn't hit us. But the train couldn't move on because there was debris on the tracks. So the train stopped. Everybody went out. Not everybody. Some people decided they're not leaving. They're just going to stay put. But my father and our family and many others ran to the forest. And we were hiding there. And then there was a whistle of some sort, and some people decided they're not going back to the train, they're staying in the forest. And my father said we have to run back quickly before the train starts to move. And we do run, and we get into the train when it started to go, and we get into France further down. And when we leave the train, we're grouped into 3 groups: Belgian citizens, French citizens, and aliens, or people without papers. Guess where we were? The people without papers. So we were placed in an internment camp for the duration. The name of the camp was Château de Frémont. It was near Mont-Luzon. And it was run by a very, very cruel commander who really was awful. He tried whatever he could to make life miserable. And my parents knew to stay away from him, especially the men. He was very cruel to the men. He didn't start up with the women. And I just found out recently why we were allowed to leave the camp. It was a surprise to me because I didn't interpret all the things that were found in my mother's box. She was a saver. And she saved ration booklets. She saved the postal service of the bags that she sent to Belgium. She saved her. I found her ksuba there. I found my birth certificate, and I found visas there. It was remarkable. All the things that I found. One of the things that I found was a certificate. I'm going to show it to you. All right. I have a lot of things. Actually, this is some of the things. This is my father's business. They said that he was a textile handler, and he paid stamps. This is in Vienna. This here is an application to go to Palestine at the time. And we had number 1811. I don't know if you can see it. But before this number was called, he was picked up to send him back to Poland. So that was out of the workings. If one thing didn't work, my father tried something else. This was a surprise to me, and I couldn't believe it, and neither could the woman who was interviewing me one time. My father, after the Anschluss, before Kristallnacht, he had gone to Berlin. And this is an expanded paper of the Königliche Siamesische General Konsulat. He wanted to even go to Siam, which is now Thailand, by the way. And when I was interviewed once, the woman who interviewed him said, he was willing to go to Siam? Did he even know where it was in the globe? And I said, what's the difference? As long as we could escape, that was the main thing. You know, there's a famous story about somebody who wants to leave, and he goes to an office, and they said, he wants to go here, and the woman says, do you have a baptismal note from the church? No, they won't let you in. And this one, you need a baptismal here too. You need one here. But isn't there anything, not on this globe, there's no place that will accept you. So the Jewish man says, maybe you have another globe. This is so typical Jewish, you know. How can you? So we were almost going to go to Siam, but we didn't. So we are in the, where's another one? There's two. We're in the Chateau de Fremont, in the camp, and the man is really doing whatever he can to make life miserable. And he tells them to do things that were so useless, just to wear them down. And my brother couldn't handle it. He was 15, 16 at that time. And he stamped his foot where everybody else was standing still when the commander was talking. And the commander saw that he was responding to what he was saying with this stamp. He wanted to shoot him. And he took the gun and moved it a little bit away from him to a stone. And there was a shot, and the bullet hit the stone, but it cracked part of the stone off, and that little piece of stone ricocheted and hit my brother on the forehead with such force that he fell down and he was unconscious. My father didn't know whether he was dead or not, but they wouldn't let him move and go to him even. I mean, that's the kind of a person he was. It was, the men knew to stay away from him, but the women he didn't bother with. And there my mother went into her second miracle. I didn't know that she knew French, but my brothers told me that she did know some French. So she went to the commander and spoke to him in French. She told him that they had visas, valid visas in Belgium, and she would like to go to the American consulate, to the nearest one next to the camp, to find out if they can do something. Since America was still neutral at the time in 1940, it was close to 41, it was getting close, no, it was still 40. And they didn't want America to get into the war against them, nor they were very careful not to annoy the United States. So he was afraid to not honor my mother's request. So my mother and father went to to Villebret and to Lyon. Lyon is a city, a major city south of Paris and north of Marseille. This says Lyon here. He gave them permission to go to Lyon, to the consulate. And my mother's French helped in the consulate. She told them that they had valid visas, but they were stuck in Antwerp. And somehow they made connections to that consulate, and they said, yes, they're under the protection of the United States now. They had valid visas that were waiting for them in Antwerp. Of course, we couldn't go to Antwerp anymore. The Nazis were there. They were already They took over. So they sent this. I'm sorry that this is in such bad shape. These are all the little pieces that I found in the box that my mother left. And this is almost coming apart, this old certificate. It's written in French, and it says, family Schechter Salomon, and his wife, Femin, and 4 infants, and 4 children. And it says he's a Polish, and it goes on. And over here it says execution de la something or other, Juliet, with the number 1940, the 14th of June. And they said hereby they are, there's a word here that says libéré, that they're in liberty. They can be released from the camp. And the general commandant of this region, and they are allowed, it says here, to retire to Marseille. This is, and the garant, the person who guarantees it, is the consulate, the American consulate in Belgium. So they had contact with the Belgian consulate, and we were permitted to leave the camp. We were the only ones who left that camp. The rest of the people, Nebuch, were sent to Auschwitz. But this was because my mother had the courage to go over to the commandant and spoke the French and did all these things. You know, you hear them and you believe them, but you wonder, is it really so? Could these things actually happen? And they did. So we're going to Marseille. We get to Marseille, and something with the tickets aren't 100%, and we're sent to another camp. This camp is called Remelot. It had 200 Jews that were sent in the same day coming to that camp. The commandant there was inept, but he wasn't cruel. He didn't know what to do with 200 Jews that just came all of a sudden. And my father could see that he was having a problem. So he told the children that they don't have to be so quiet, because the commandant, through an interpreter, said the men are going to go here and the women are going to go over there with their children. So they said, better you start. We were permitted to run around and make noise, which we did. And then my father went to the commandant and said, if you allow the 2 parents to discipline the children, you'll have a much easier time of it. It's not kedai to separate and he agreed. So we were able to stay together. So that was one thing. Then he said, wouldn't you like some help with the 200 that came in? My mother in the first camp suffered from hysterical blindness. She didn't have enough nutrition, and she couldn't see for 2 days, and we were scared. The children, we were so afraid what was going to be. And then slowly she was able to drink and drink, and my father kept on telling her to. They kept kosher all this time, and they wouldn't take anything that wasn't, and they permitted us to eat some of the things. When we got the shimeldike, how do you say? Mold. There were mold, green mold on the bread that we got. My father wouldn't let us eat it stam. He put it on a stick and he made a little fire, and we put it in and we toasted it. So when the green thing turned crispy and we turned it over, then we could eat what was left. The toast was so we had very, very poor nutrition in that camp. My father knew if we didn't get good food, we wouldn't survive. We just needed to get. He goes over to the commander and he said, I'm a master chef. Wouldn't you like some help in the kitchen for all these people who just came in? And he says, go talk to the cook. I think he would be happy. He goes to the cook and he says he's a master. He never lifted a pot in my mother's house. He's a master chef. Would they allow him to cook for the 200 people that came in? And the cook said, "Fine, I'll give you bones and some meat." No, 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 thank you very much. Just give me legumes and vegetables in raw state. I don't need anything else, and they'll be very happy and thankful to you. He koshered 2 big vats, and he started to make soup that was thick and nourishing. That was our meal for the day. And pretty soon the Italian prisoners lined up in our line and also ate from the soup. So my father became the cook, and we had nourishment, and that was a very, very big plus. Then our shoes wore out, and some people died when they got an infection in their foot. There was no medical assistance at all. From a little scrape or gangrene would set in, and the people would die from a gornish, from nothing. My father was very, very anxious that we shouldn't get hurt, and we have to be very careful and all. He used to boil our water and do whatever he could to keep us safe. But the commander was so nice, he even allowed people to go into the city and bring back a last and nails and shoemaker's knife and things. And my father found an old tire from a car, and he cut the rubber, and he created soles that he put underneath our shoes. And besides being the cook, he became the sandlar too. He was the shoemaker in the camp. And whatever he could do, he did not only for our family, but for whoever happened to be. People used to watch to see what Mr. Schechter does, and then they would copy and do the same thing. He was so innovative and so creative. I didn't appreciate it. I thought every father was like that. But he was really, really remarkable. Anyway, it came to a point where it was summertime and Rosh Hashanah was coming. We were supposed to, we didn't have machzorim or anything, but my father was also a Baal Tefillah. He had a beautiful, sweet voice. He wasn't a chazan, but he was a wonderful Baal Tefillah, and he knew the nusach by heart. So that wasn't a problem. But my brother, my older brother, said, "But we don't have a shofar. What are we going to do with a shofar? We don't have it." He snuck out of the camp, and he went to a butcher shop, and he asked for if he could have the head of the whatever they had, if they had 2 horns. He came back with 2 little horns. He was going to go make a shofar. He doesn't have equipment to make a shofar. He had a piece of wire, one iron. He rubbed it against a stone to make a spitz, a point, and he starts to drill and to push it through the inside of the shofar, and he pushes a little bit too far in, and it comes out on the side, and the shofar is puzzled. He can't use that. The second shofar, he's more careful, and he goes slower, and he succeeds, and all of a sudden we hear a sound. That shofar made such a high shrieking sound, it was not to be believed. So we have a shofar for Rosh Hashanah. But my brother has this shofar to this day. Not really. He gave it to his eldest son because he felt that he wasn't going to live forever, and he gave away all his precious things to the people that he thought would appreciate them. So my nephew, his oldest son, has his shofar. When my grandson did a work for school, he was asked to make a root kind of a thing. So you talked about Onzel Zalman making a shofar. Do you think you can show me a picture of that shofar so I can put it in my avodah, in my work? So I wrote my brother and I asked him to please send me a picture of the shofar. He did, very, very quickly. This is the picture of the shofar. And my grandson put it in his avodah. He even had a picture of the shofar on its side. This is the open mouth of the shofar. Wow. It looks lovely, doesn't it? And then he took a picture of the shofar holding it in his hand, and now you can see how big that thing is. It's a pitsy. It's so small. It looks quite presentable over here. But that's the size of it. And this little chauffeur made a tremendous sound, and that's what he did.
Wow.
Anyway, the commander came and he had a number of people on a list. And we were on the list also as being able to leave the camp. I guess it had to do with our Belgian visas or something. So we were permitted to go to Marseille. And we were in Marseille. This time I was placed in the first grade learning French. And I already had a few languages under my belt. I was speaking German, Yiddish, French, and Flemish. And my father was busy trying to activate what he could to get the visas going. And we had very, very wonderful mazel and intervention with a vice consul, Hiram Bingham, who was in France, and he issued visas to all the people that were on Hitler's hit list, those that Hitler really did. On his hit list were many, many artists and people who enriched the 20th century, like Chagall, Furtwängler, Merkel, Mann, all the big, Hannah Arendt, all the philosophers, he had a whole list of people, and they were housed in Bingham's home because he had diplomatic immunity at the time. So he took care of all of these people in his house. He helped Fry, Varian Fry, to give him, you know the story. So and we somehow got to Bingham too. And he gave us visas because the Belgian visas were not valid in France. And the French visas had many, many more stringent rules at that time. The State Department didn't want any more Jews in the US. And they made it very difficult. And he had to do this on the sly, which he did. He saved, in the 1 year and 4 months that he was there, he saved over 2,500 people. Bingham. So, and among them were the 6 Schechters. This is a picture of, an enlarged picture of our visa. Since the 3 of us were minors, we were under my father's visa. My brother Zalman had his own visa and my mother had her visa, but we were all under my father's visa. When I saw this, I had a Knipschen fit. Do you know where I was born? I was born in Vienna, Germany. I thought I was born in Vienna, Austria. But the United States honored the Anschluss, and they wrote that I was born in Germany. It's on this visa, Vienna, Germany. Okay. Here's Hiram Bingham's signature all over the visa. This is the back of the visa, the back page of the visa. We left the 17th of February 1941. 2.5 months afterwards, on May, no, it was almost 3 months, not quite. On May 15th, all the Jews in France were gathered up and sent to Poland, to Auschwitz was already camped there. Pétain had signed a treaty with the Germans, with France and Germany, that they would release all the Jews. It was called release on demand. When they would demand the Jews, they would give them to the Nazis, and they did. And we were already on the boat before that edict was, it was just a few months. Also, Bingham was ousted from Marseille. They found out what he was doing, and he also left in the 7th of May. He was asked to leave. So we got there just in time. This back page shows part of the, you can see the red thing coming through from the other side. But over here on the bottom, it says that the Canadian, what does it say? It was the Canadian border that we were able to use this paper. This became our passport. We could go wherever we needed to go as long as we had this. Because we didn't have any passports, we had no papers at all. But regardless, it was amazing. These are all the places that we were and all the stamps that they had to put on. And this was all in the box that my mother left. Oh, here it is. Canadian immigration, 1942. That was the summer that we went to Canada. I had an aunt who went to Canada. They wanted farmers to come, so they got out of Belgium before the camps. And my mother sent us to her so we would learn to eat vegetables, which we hadn't had in 3 years. So we went to the farm and for the summer. And we got through to Canada because we had this visa. Amazing. I have a story now. How am I doing on time? Okay. I was going to tell one story too about my father. We weren't allowed to fetch too much without being hungry. But one time we really were, we couldn't hold back. We kept saying, "He's hungry." We were hungry. And we were walking, it was cold. There was a little snow on the ground, but we were warmly dressed. And we just complained that we were hungry. My father looked at us and he told us to be quiet. And he went in, we were near a farm, he went into the chicken coop. He picked up a chicken and he took an egg and put it in his pocket. From the other pocket he took out a coin and put it instead of the egg. He did the same thing with another egg and gave him another coin. The coin was worth much more than the egg, but at that time he took 3 eggs for the 3 youngest children. My older brother didn't have. My mother took a hairpin, made a hole on one side of the egg and a hole on the other side of the egg. Then she shook it vigorously back and forth. And then she said, "Tsutsu." And we sucked and we sucked and we sucked until everything was gone. That egg, I remember it to this day. I wouldn't eat a raw egg now. But then it was so warm and so satisfying. It was so delicious. I was so pleased with that egg. I wouldn't let go of the shell of the egg, thinking maybe there's something more inside. It was amazing. We were so happy to get that egg. He always looked out for us, you know, in every way. And anyway, we're coming. This was one incident. I don't even remember where it was, whether it was before the camps or in the middle of the one camp or the other. But I remember that egg. We went afterwards when we got the visas. My brother got an invitation from a friend who told him that Bingham's son wanted to have the post office honor a stamp in his honor because Colin Powell had given him a posthumous award for constructive dissent. In 1940s, nobody made protests. In the 60s, yes, but in the early years, who would protest? And he was, and Colin Powell gave him credit for thinking that this law was not humane, and he went against it and gave visas to people. So he wanted to give him credit. His son was anxious for him to get the stamp. He sent out papers to ask people to petition the post office. that they would honor Bingham. My brother wrote an email with all of his contacts at the top with that bakasha, with that request to ask the post office to make an honorary stamp for Bingham. He said, it could be that this man signed our visas. I see this email, I leave the thing on the computer, and I go to the box and I open it up and I see the visas, and sure enough, Bingham's name is signed. I run back to the computer, press the reply to all button, and I said, Yossi, you're right. Bingham's name is on our visas. Well, Yossi doesn't, I had a brother who was very much like this, straight. When he had a chance to do Hakarat HaTov, he didn't wait for tomorrow. He did it right away. He had such strong ethics to say thank you. He finds Bingham's email and he writes him immediately that he and all of his friends are going to work towards the petition to get his father's stamp. And he would, if he's interested, his sister has the original visas that his father signed. Well, he gets a letter back from Bingham, the son. I have never seen my father's signature on any visas. We have many, many thank you letters, but no one ever returned a visa. Could you please send us a copy of it? Yossi doesn't wait. Immediately he sends the picture of the visas to Bingham. The next day they're all over the internet. And it helps get the stamp for Bingham. So, the Bingham thing is here on the bottom, I think. No? Maybe I have it here. He writes to Bingham and he tells him that his father had signed our visas. I don't think it's here. I have it inside the, yeah. It's not here, okay. The stamp was issued. This is Bingham, the stamp that they gave him for honor, for constructive dissent. This person is Jungleib, Herman Jungleib, the cousin who worked to get the visas. This person is Saul Bloom, who wrote in the Congress that they should allow the 6 Shechters to come into the United States. And these 6 people here are the ones that were saved by these 3 people. This is a copy of a picture that my brother Yossi has in his house. And he used to look at this picture and always think how wonderful that these people, to give a thank you for saving us. Now what happened with all these people is remarkable too. I can't go into all the histories of what they've done, but Yossi especially was very, very active in Yad Vashem and in the Hall of Names. And he did some excellent work there, combining the computers so that the different spellings from different areas, and if somebody would say Luchale, and they would write, and she comes from a blank, and the ending is CZ, he knew it was from Hungary. And if it was TS, he would know it was from another city. He knew languages. And he saw that once a person said Rachel, another one said Ruchale, and the other one said Rachel, and they all had 3 different papers, and they thought there were 3 different people, and Yossi took a look at the date of the birth and the city that they were born, and he combined all the variants into one, so that he made order on all this, and people could find each other, and so he put together so many people who thought the other one was dead, and he was able to unite them. Unbelievable what he did. He used to go to Los Angeles, where my parents lived, with papers from Yad Vashem, and he said, I know it's difficult for you to fill this out, And the person says, yeah, how could I possibly write his name on one little line when his personality was such a major force? I said, yes, he understood. He said, I'll write it for you. It's so important to remember his name and that he once lived and he did all these things. And he filled out paper after paper, going from place to see what he can do to get all the names put in. My sister, anyway, regardless, there are all kinds of wonderful things that the kids really did, and I'm very proud to be part of that family. I never write, but my brother Yossi had a correspondence with the Binghams constantly. It started out that he would return and write, Dear Rabbi Schechter, my two brothers were Rabbanim. Dear Rabbi Schechter, thank you, da 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 da. The next time, after a few years, he would write, Our dear friend, da 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 da. A few years more go by and he says, Our mishpacha in Israel. This man is a Presbyterian and he's using the word mishpacha. It got to a point where you couldn't believe the contact and the feeling that went between our family and the Bingham people. My daughter graduated from Wurzweiler's School of Social Work many years, in 2007 with a master's. She now has her PhD, but I went to the graduation. And I was going to the States, and I said, well, he's in Connecticut. Maybe we should go to Hartford and visit with Bingham and show the children to him and give him nachas of what his father did. So I write him a letter. The first letter I wrote, my brother was in constant correspondence with him, and I don't write very well. So I say, my name is Devorah Kieffer. I'm the sister of Rabbi Joseph Schechter, and I'm going to be making a trip with my family to the United States. If it would be convenient for you to meet with us, we would come to Hartford, Connecticut, and it would be such an honor for my grandchildren to meet the person who saved, the son of the person who saved us. Well, I get a letter back immediately from his wife. Kim is not home now, but please, we'll be so happy to meet one of the Schechters. Come to dinner and this and that, and I'm already part of the mishpacha there. And I have to tell her thank you very much, but we have dietary restrictions, and I have to be in New York for Shabbat, and she apologizes to me that she didn't realize that that would be a thing. And they were so cordial and welcoming. I prepared the children for the visit, and they know what the Binghams did. And my granddaughter, who was then, she was 6.5, something like that, and he paid for his, with his work for doing this. They kicked him out of the diplomatic corps, and he died a pauper, this vice consular. Eden says to me, but Bobby, if he hadn't done that, you would be dead. And then Ima wouldn't be here, and neither would I. That little Kachkele knew all the ramifications of what that meant. I couldn't believe that she was able to see that. You know, she was just a young girl. Anyway, we go to meet Bingham, and she and he get along very well. She never, ever, ever held any person's hand. Her mother worked with people who were, never mind. So the kids know that they don't go with any stranger. Take a look. They're holding hands and they're walking together. This is Robert Bingham walking with my granddaughter to where we all met together. And here's the picture of all of us with Robert Bingham, with Kim. Eden, my daughter Nechama, her husband Mati, her two boys, the third boy wasn't born yet, and this little one, Or, asked Robert Bingham, why did your father do this? He knew he was going to get into trouble for saving Jews, and he answered him, because he believed in the divine spirit of every human being. And Or's looking at him. That's not in his vocabulary. He's an Israeli. He doesn't know what he's talking about. So I translated, Hu hamin b'tzelem Elokim sheyesh b'chol ben adam. And then he says, Ze shalanu. He couldn't imagine that the Torah was also was not exclusively for Jews, that other religions also gleaned from the Torah. He was so impressed that Ze shalanu, and he was afraid to say it out loud. He was almost hiding. Ze shalanu. And that was quite a lesson for him. But we had quite a meeting with him. This is Robert Bingham here. And this is my husband, my late husband, and myself with our visit to the Binghams. We still have contact with them, and he asked us, he knows a lot about Jewish customs. He said that you light a candle for the departed, and a light is supposed to do. Could I ask you please to light a candle for my father on January 12th? That's his day that he departed. Well, the whole family lights a Ner Zicharon for Hiram Bingham on the 12th of January. And he is so grateful and so impressed. And we feel close to him. He thinks that he's mishpacha to us. We had a Zoom together. I don't have a picture of the Zoom, or do I? No, I didn't take it. We had a Zoom with his sisters and brothers. He has one sister and many brothers. All of our family was on the Zoom, and we talked back and forth. We felt really almost like a mishpacha. He wants to come to Israel and have a group meeting with the two families. And he quoted a lot of things that I was surprised to hear from someone who wasn't Jewish. He said that if you save one person, it's as if you saved the world. And all kinds of things that, here's a picture of the Zoom. I thought I had it. This is one of the pictures of the Zoom that we had with the Binghams. And there was so much going on, and people were laughing, and we cried, and we had such a wonderful exchange of unreal. This is a picture of just me, my family. When he says when you save one person, you save a world. What can I say? I feel so gebenched to be here and to be able to tell you that there are some people who really deserve a lot of credit and thank yous. And I thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu with all the chasadim that he gave our family and all the nisim. I counted 18 on my father's side, quite a few on my brother's side, and 2 very important ones from my mother. All the people who went outside their comfort zone to try and to do things a little bit different in order to save. So we should all... If they want to ask.
Question time. Devorah will answer a few.
I'm afraid to ask, what happened to the grandparents?
What?
The grandparents, your parents, their parents.
My parents?
Your grandparents. What happened to the grandparents? Yeah.
My grandmother lived with her daughter, with Tante Pepe, the one that hid my father in their basement in Canada. And she wasn't able to come to my wedding. My grandparents weren't alive at that time. And I was zochet to go to my great-granddaughter's wedding. It's not to be believed. The great-granddaughter, yeah.
Wow.
Their lifespan was much shorter than ours now. They lived in Canada most of their lives, with my aunt. My parents lived in New York. My father was very anxious for us to have a Jewish education. He wouldn't allow us to go to public school.
We're in New York, can I ask?
Pardon?
We're in New York.
Borough Park.
That's from New York. It's not
We were in, the way we got to New York was also a miracle. Did I tell you about I didn't tell you about Frank Richardson, did I? Oh my. We were in San Juan, Puerto Rico, after we went to St. Thomas, which was an American thing. We were 6 weeks on the boat. Did I tell you about the boat trip? Oh, on February 17th, we were on the boat going out. We went to Oran, Algeria, through the Straits of Gibraltar, down to Casablanca, Morocco, and then to Senegal, further down, Africa. We had to stay away from the northern part of the Atlantic because the U-boats were exploding all the ships in the Atlantic, and we tried to avoid them, so we went this way until we got to the Antilles. So we first stepped off in St. Thomas, then we went to, it was too small, we couldn't get, it was close to Pesach, we had no matzahs, there were no matzahs on the island. We went to Puerto Rico, which was a little bit bigger. We stayed in San Juan, the capital, and we wanted to come to the States. All the boats were taken, no room. My father went every day to see if he can get a passage. He took my brother, Zalman, the older one, took my baby sister wasn't so baby anymore. She was almost 5, 6 at the time. He took her to a park, and she needed to use the facilities. So he went to the field house, and he saw a man there. He talked to the man in English, because on the boat he was learning English. He already knew around 7, 8 languages by then, but he learned English. He spoke to him in English, and he said, "Could you show me where my sister can go?" And then he turned to her and he talked to her in French, because that was the last place we were. And he showed her where to go. And the man was intrigued with him. He was also a very good-looking, nice young man. And he found out the story, that we were anxious to get to the United States, but there was no passage on any of the boats. He said, "Follow me." My brother and my sister followed this Frank Richardson to the Alcoa ship line company. He goes into the office and they all wave, "Hi Frank, hi Frank." He goes into the vice president's office and he says, "Hi, what you doing here?" "I want 6 places on the boat that leaves tomorrow morning for New York." He said, "Can't do it, it's all booked." "Well, I'm not leaving till you find 6 places." I said, "It's all booked." And I said, "I'm not leaving until you find 6 places." And they were very friendly. And he looked and he looked and he looked. Zalman comes home. "Pa, we have to get packed. We're leaving tomorrow morning on the boat that's leaving for New York." My father says, "That's very funny. You have any other jokes you want to say?" "I'm serious. We're going to go to New York." He finally convinces my father, and the next morning, early, we go to the ship. People at the ship. What a ship. We came on this, Ipanema was the name of our rusty old boat that had, how it made the Atlantic is amazing. We were on the lifeboats a few times, but okay, it took 6 weeks to get to and this thing was immense. Streamliner, so gorgeous, amazing. People are going up there and they're dressed in the nines and everything is so high class. And here the schleppers are coming up the plank and no suitcases, we're schlepping little bags, whatever we have with us, and we look like we were. And he says, "Get out of here, you don't belong in this boat." And my father stops and Zalman says, "Keep walking." And then he talks to the captain, and he says, "We were added on the last minute yesterday. Look at the bottom of your docket." And he looks, and sure enough, he sees Then he sees where we're going to be, and he goes like this, and he's ready to collapse, this captain. And a purser comes, and he takes Zalman and Yossi to some cabin, I don't know where they were, but the four of us, my sister and I and my parents, follow the purser, and he takes us to this place. Double doors open up. The biggest bed I ever saw in my life, what we were sleeping on before, you wouldn't believe. A gorgeous bouquet of flowers on one side of the bouquet, and fresh fruit, tropical fruit on the other side. This is where we're going to sleep tonight? I couldn't believe it. It turns out it's the one place that wasn't sold. It was the presidential suite. And he was such a good friend of the owner that he gave it to us for the night. Can you imagine such a thing? And that was because Zalman Matzachen Be'enav. Zalman, he enjoyed talking to Zalman, and he found out that we needed to go to the States before Pesach. These things are not normal, you know. Every step of the way we had so much hashgacha, it's hard to believe. I think I'm finished. Is there anything you want to add?
Rabbi Sal Mendel, just a second.
I think I'm speaking for all of us when I said I've been here 5 years listening, and tonight was one of the most inspirational talks. I don't even have any words to say, but I'm so thankful.
We had so much help.
It was just an extraordinary, and the way you presented it, and it's really, so thankful to you. And
thank you for listening. And I want to talk to you. How come you know about people?
It's a book.
What
It's a book about Varian Fry.
Oh, Varian Fry.
Yeah, very much so. And a Netflix. There's Netflix.
All right, thank you.
This is a book that Kim Bingham wrote about his father, and it's called what Colin Powell's called him, The Courageous Descent. And if you look over here, you see my brother's visa picture there on the front. And in the book, we have such a relationship with him that it's hard to believe. This is the back picture of our visa. He has and the letter that he wrote to him is in the appendix, and we really feel so close to the people. How many people get a chance to say thank you to the people who saved them? It's mind-boggling. It's such a schus to have this relationship with his family, and we really feel very, very gebenched.
We also just thank Anna, because every year she does this as the Labour of God.
Yeah.
And she makes sure
We can all feel the power of the first-hand experience, and since its inception in 2010, Zicharon Basalon has grown into a community of participants of millions worldwide. Let us share what we heard and felt tonight, thanks to Devorah Kieffer. Share with our children and grandchildren. Thank you for two of mine for being here. Let us make sure that the next generations continue to remember, to honour, and to ensure that such evil will truly be never again. On your way out tonight, by the door, please take a copy of the prayer, which I hope you might say while lighting 6 candles in memoriam on Wednesday night. And I think Benny, you wanted to say, where are you, Benny? For the Yom HaZikaron.
We move to Yom HaZikaron. Unfortunately, we have an event on Shabbat. Just information for everybody who want to come or is registered. We moved it to the shul at 5 o'clock, and not in our apartment. There's so many people who are having registered. It's in the shul at 5 o'clock.
Okay. And finally, please join in the singing of the partisan song in Yiddish, the chief anthem of Holocaust survivors. The lyrics were written in 1943 by Hirsch Glick. a young inmate of the Vilna ghetto, and were inspired by the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. The song title, Zog Nicht Kein Mol, and you can take one per two people. Just one for two people. Zog Nicht Kein Mol means never say, and it was adopted by Jewish partisan groups in Eastern Europe to become a symbol of resistance against Nazi Germany. And as we then conclude with Hatikva, let us set our minds towards hope. Everyone rise.
Why just sing it? We just sing it. Just sing it.
Yeah.
Josh, it's not working.
Oh, Lord.
Thank you so much.
תודה רבה. אני ישראלית,